Welcome to the GC BizCast, a production of J. Whitney Bunting College of Business at Georgia College and State University. Here we discuss the important topics with business leaders and educators. We produce weekly podcasts from our beautiful campus in Milledgeville, Georgia. We're excited that you've joined us. Our conversation should inform and entertain you. The views expressed are the views of the individuals on the program and do not represent the views of Georgia College and State University. So let's get started.
We are here today with Dr. Geddy. I'm Ryley Cole, and this is Hope Begashaw. And we want to just start off with a little bit of background information about yourself. Would you like to tell us about where you went to school?
Okay, well, we'll start with college, I guess, and I came to Georgia College. And after my first year here, I did like a lot of Georgia College students tend to do. I transferred to UGA. But I hated it so much, I came back. So I only stayed there, then it was the quarter system, not the semester system, but I was there for the fall quarter, and then I came back because it was just too big, too impersonal. You could go forever without seeing people you knew, and I was used to running into everybody. So I came back. I met my husband that spring, and then we got married a year later, and so it was right before my senior year, and so I finished up here after that, and then I took a job as a programmer and worked in programming in Macon for 3 different companies over a period of 5 years. And while I was doing that, I worked on my MBA in finance at Mercer. Back then, they didn't really have specialized degrees, so a master's in business was pretty much your only choice. They actually started the MMIS degree when I was already getting my MBA. And then I decided I wanted to teach. Well, actually, I already knew I wanted to teach, and that's why I got the master's, was then to go get the PhD. And so I quit work and went to Georgia State and got my master's in MIS. And then while I was a student there, I spent 3 years as a temporary instructor at Kennesaw State University. And when I graduated with my PhD, I took a job at Georgia Military College as the Vice President of Information Technology for a year and a half before I came over here in the fall of 1996 as an assistant professor. And then I've been here since then. I've been assistant, associate, full professor, and back in July of 2011, I took the the interim position as the department chair that was made permanent in March of 2012. And so I've been department chair since then. And then in January of 21, I added the interim associate dean. And so I'm both the department chair and the interim associate dean until June 30th, because July 1st, I'll be the associate dean. And they don't have a new me yet from a department chair standpoint.
That's awesome. So why did you choose STEM or computer
Well,
science?
we didn't call it STEM back then. Basically, when I started out, okay, you know how old boyfriends or girlfriends wind up influencing what you do. The guy I was dating way back when wasn't, because, you know, college wasn't quite as common, and so he wasn't as crazy about that. And so when I initially declared here, I declared for, they had a 2-year secretary degree. And so I declared for that. Thankfully, we broke up before my senior year of high school was over. And so the first thing I did when I got here, I said, okay, I know I want to go into business. I like numbers. I liked bookkeeping. Let's do accounting. So I changed it to accounting, and advising wasn't done the way it is now. Basically, they just handed you the catalog and said, here. And so you could take whatever you wanted when you wanted. So I started out, I came the summer after I graduated from high school because I wanted to get started early, and took accounting 1 in the first session and accounting 2 in the second session. So the fall of my freshman year, I started with intermediate accounting. And I'm like, no. So I stayed in it, and I went ahead after that and did intermediate 2 and cost and managerial. I loved cost, but I knew that wasn't what I wanted to go into. So I was just taking the common business core stuff, and back then, instead of principles of information systems, you had to take basic programming. Mm-hmm. So I took basic programming and fell in love, and said, somebody's going to pay me to do this. I am so in. And so that's how I wound up in programming. And I had one really good professor who taught me the second COBOL class. We had 2 COBOL classes, and she taught the second one. And she brought in RPG and showed us a little bit of RPG. And she was kind of the one who inspired me with the teaching, because the other guy I had for the first COBOL was not good at all. And so I wound up doing a lot of tutoring in the class as I understood the basics so well and enjoyed doing that. And had always tutored a lot growing up.
Oh my gosh. Just hearing you and hearing like what schooling you did and how many career paths you took to end up in your career path is just amazing, because I commend you. Like, I can't imagine being a student and then being the intern professor at the same time and trying to figure out and then knowing programming as well. Like, that is such an awesome skill set, and I commend you for that. And I know that as a woman in STEM, like, even though it wasn't called STEM back then, but like now it is, but I know that because the fields that you did study are male dominated, and I just wanted to know, like, as a woman in STEM myself, like, I see that challenges that I can face, but what challenges that did you face when you were in school?
Well, for one, I'm an only child, which means I'm my father's only son. Okay?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was scouting, he's a football coach. I was scouting football by the time I was 12. So I never knew that there was anything that a girl shouldn't do. I mean, I knew I wasn't playing football because that just wasn't done. They were just starting to allow girls to play Little League baseball. And when they said they're like a girl, they were talking about me, so there was no way I did that. But I guess he always instilled in me, you can do whatever you want to do. And so I never thought about being a female in terms of limiting what I could do. Also, when I came through in college, even though there was less females in the field, I graduated at the height of the number of females. So I graduated in 84 when it hit 35%. And so almost a third of my class was typically female. So while it was still a male-dominated field, I never thought twice about it.
Wow.
Very cool. So your first job after finishing school, you said you worked as a programmer for 3 different companies. Would you be able to tell our audience a little bit about what that programming position looked like for those?
Okay. Well, I programmed in RPG, which is a report generator language, and it's very similar to COBOL. And I worked first for an accounting firm, and I was there for 8 months. During the time I was there, I realized that my boss wasn't very good when it came to programming. I mean, from a boss perspective, he was fine. But from a programming perspective, a lot of the things he was having me do was not the way that I thought were the best way to do things. And so that's one reason why I started looking so early in the process after only being there 6 or 8 months. And so then I took a job for a small consulting firm. Absolutely loved it, because what you did there was you went to the various clients, so you weren't actually in that office very much. You were out in other people's offices, and you were working on the programs that they wanted you to do. So I did everything from inventory management and job costing to payroll to customer relationship. Had several clients. I guess I should mention names because it was so long ago. But anyway, one was an eye doctor's office, and so we worked with all the insurance stuff that had to do with that. We did payroll for several different groups. We did job costing, accounts payable, accounts receivable, so a little bit of everything, which is why I've always, when I taught programming, I used to teach programming a good bit, and when I taught programming, I would always tell them how important it is to understand your accounting and finance and marketing and all of that kind of stuff, because you've got to understand what you're doing to program it.
Absolutely. It's important to understand what you're working with.
And then the third company I worked for was YKK, and I was there for 3 years. And my boss used to joke that he came with the computer. And so literally we sat at 2 desks facing each other like this, and he sat there and I sat here. We had another boss, but he programmed in COBOL and we programmed in RPG, so we didn't do any of the same stuff. And we did everything except for fixed assets. We had purchased the fixed assets package, but everything else we programmed from scratch. And that was when GM came along at that time and basically said that you had to do EDI, which was electronic data interchange, which that wasn't done that much before. And so we had to set up all the barcodes and all the stuff to do the EDI, because YKK made all the zippers in the GM cars. And so we were highly advanced, and I loved that. I loved that. I loved working for the consulting firm, and I loved working for YKK. I left the consulting firm because I felt like that the owner had not continued to go out and get more business, and that it did fold about 2 years or so after I left. And then I really enjoyed YKK because we did so many different things, but I really wanted to teach. And so that's why I left there to go back to school.
What drove your passion to want to come back to Georgia College to be a professor and teach?
Well, I guess partly my parents were teachers. And so I grew in, aunts, uncles, that kind of stuff. I grew up with teaching in the blood, but none of them taught college. All of them were elementary school or high school or that kind of thing. And so that's part of it. And like I'd said earlier, I always did a whole lot of tutoring. And so I always liked doing that. I liked seeing the light bulbs going off. I liked teaching people the way that it should be done, as opposed to, that's not how you do that. We need to do that this way instead. And so I guess that was part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just seeing, I know that teaching has changed. Like I have a younger brother, and seeing him how he learns simple things, like when he was learning division, how it's changed, and oh no, you don't do this, you have to do this now, and teaching's always changing, and it's just seeing that oh, that's what the book says, so I'm going to teach you this way. I like how you like the interactive and just teaching, oh, this is how it's easier, and this is how teaching this way is more efficient, and I like how you said that. But one question that I think our audience has is, I feel like people in STEM have this stereotype that they're introverted and they don't want to talk to anyone, and that they prefer to work on projects alone. But you have so much experience of having so many jobs and different careers. What do you consider yourself, as an introvert or more of extroverted?
Definitely more extroverted. Now, growing up, I was pretty shy. It wasn't until I was about 12 or 13 that I started growing out of that a little bit. And I mean, it's just always hard to get to know new people, even if you're an extrovert.
Right.
But I'm definitely much more of a talker. I remember when I was working on my PhD, and the times that I was teaching during Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I was at home by myself on Tuesday and Thursday. And I remember my husband one time after he came home from work, he said, "You didn't talk to anybody today, did you?" Because I was just talking nonstop from the time you walked in the door. So I'm definitely more of a extroverted talker.
Yeah, I feel like I'm more of an extroverted person as well. So as you wear so many hats, you're currently, for our audience, for those of you who don't know, Dr. Geddy's currently the department chair of MIS and
IS and CS.
And she is currently the intern associate dean, and she will become the associate dean in the summer. And so you wear, like I was saying, you wear so many hats. So what does a typical day for you look like?
I don't think there is a typical day. It's kind of like you do what has to be done to begin with, and you get that part done. So it may be grading something from class, it may be working on something related to the department, or it may be doing something for the dean. It's kind of like squeaky wheel gets the grease. That's the one that I have to go do first, and then I try to keep kind of a list of what else needs to be worked on.
Okay, so and for our audience that does, so that you know, I currently have Dr. Getty as one of my professors. She teaches our professional development class. And so with your new position that's coming up in the fall as the associate dean, will you be, do you know what duties that you will have? Will you be continuing teaching that class?
Yes, I will. As the department chairs typically teach 3 classes in a year. And the associate dean teaches 2 classes in a year. And so I'll keep my 2 professionalism classes as the 2 that I teach. The way that MIS and now CS is starting to require it too, instead of it just being optional, and we'll do 2 sections because it'll be too big to do as one. And so the first class is CBIS CSCI 2810. It's called Professional Development, and we cover basic resumes, we cover LinkedIn, We cover basic business etiquette. We have dining etiquette. The IT Advisory Board sponsors the dinner and comes to the dinner. So we have professionals at the dinner with our students for the etiquette dinner. And then we have the IT Advisory Board also does a student networking event. And so we have that on class night, one night, to do more of the networking as well. And pre-pandemic, we used to do job shadowing. But the fact that so many haven't gone back to work, they're working remotely, along with the fact that I started this last year, and I think the students actually got more out of it than they did the job shadowing, so they're interviewing a professional. Yeah. And I just finished grading all those, and I enjoyed reading them all, and most of them got a whole lot out of that. Yeah. And they also have to go to a couple of outside events, as well as the IT career fair. And then in the second class, which is 2811, that's called career development, but it is the application letter instead of just the resume. We do mock interviews, we do interview stream, we do the elevator pitch, we do a lot of interview tips, and we end with an alumni panel of the last 5 years so they can find more out about transition to the real world.
Yeah, and I've gained so much knowledge from being in that class, the first part of the professional development, because I think the College of Business does a great job of emphasizing having a resume and having an elevator pitch and being able to sell yourself. And it's so important because I know so many of my friends that go to different schools and they don't have that focus. And I appreciate that, that our school is so small that you have that ability to reach more students. So I'm thanking you that you have those emphasis in that class. I've gained a lot of insight and it's benefited me. So thank you.
Well, good.
With all of your positions and everything you do at our school, it seems like it can be so overwhelming at times almost. And it, for me at least, I'm in school and it already feels like it can be overwhelming at times. So I just want to focus on something what is your favorite part of going about your day or your favorite part of your jobs?
Oh gosh, that's tough. I hate to say I'm a spreadsheet nerd, but I don't mind doing my spreadsheet work that I need to do for stuff. I guess that's part of the programmer in me. It's that kind of stuff because I really don't get into programming anymore. And so if I get to do something with the database or SQL or the Excel, I actually enjoy doing that kind of thing. So that's always a good thing. My days are so different and there's so many different meetings about so many different things. It just kind of, I don't know, it just kind of depends from that standpoint. And it's always been if I'm having a not so great day or don't feel that well and I go to class, I always feel better after class.
Absolutely.
And so because I do enjoy that with my professional development classes, it's not as much of me actually teaching as it is coordinating and bringing in others because it's almost like I'm the parent and they don't listen to me as much as they'll listen to someone I bring in from the outside. So I do a lot more of coordination than actual teaching.
Very cool. What would you say is the least favorite part about your duties?
Oh, well, it's always personnel issues. And by personnel issues, it may be a student issue relating to some kind of thing like that, not involve faculty, or it may be a faculty issue. But I think in any job, it's the conflict. Yeah. That's the hard part. So whether it's a student with a complaint or a faculty member with a complaint or whatever it is, those are always the hardest things.
Yes, absolutely.
With those complaints, do you get a lot of student complaints? How would you handle,
it depends on what it is. The first thing, and one of the first things you learn is there's at least 3 sides to every story. And so it's always to go gather from the other side because often the student is not necessarily lying to you, but omitting things that really make a difference in what the whole picture is.
Yeah.
And so no matter who it is, whether it's student or faculty or parent or whatever, you have to make sure that you get all sides to it. The other thing is, if a parent calls, you have to check with the registrar's office first to make sure that the agreement has been signed, or you can't talk to the parent about anything in terms of how the student is doing.
Yes.
Which, as a parent, I understand that's a really hard thing for a parent to understand. I'm paying for it, but you can't talk to me.
Right.
Which I made my kids go sign it first thing. But it's kind of like a lot of parents don't even know it exists because it just kind of never showed up on the radar. And so sometimes that's a bit of a problem, is making sure before you talk to a parent.
What would you say is one of your biggest accomplishments throughout your career so far?
Career accomplishments. I guess I'm probably very proud of the years and the things that I've done in the department as department chair, because I feel like we started the IT career fair, we started the advisory board, we did the etiquette dinner, the networking event, the board does a luncheon with faculty in the fall. We've really grown the major, and then of course taking the female students to Grace Hopper is huge in the way that we've been able to grow that and do that. And so I guess those things are probably, we got initial ABET accreditation, and we should, all indications are that way, but you can't officially announce it yet, have achieved reaccreditation for an ABET for the CS program for this next year. And then we've also launching the data science degree as well this fall. So just kind of a lot of things along what the department has accomplished through the advisory board and through the things that we've done with that are probably the best. And I expect that I will have the kind of the difference with the associate dean position is, instead of just doing it for one department, you're looking at doing it for the whole college. And so that's the way I look at that, is the fact that, okay, yes, I'm leaving the department, but they're in a good position and somebody else can come in and add more new things that I hadn't thought about, and I can be looking at various things that can be done for the whole college.
Explain to our audience what Grace Hopper is, and are you excited for it?
Yes. Grace Hopper is the celebration of women in computing. It's the largest gathering of female technologists in the world. And back, I don't know, maybe 2014, I didn't know it existed. And it had actually existed, I guess it's about 2007 or so. And it's been growing exponentially up till the pandemic hit. It had grown exponentially every year. And we started out with sending one faculty and one student. And then I got the IT advisory board involved. And so they said they'd sponsor the student to be able to pay for the student to go. And that year, when I put forth the information and asked for essays, I had 2 students apply. And so the board interviewed those 2 students to pick the one, where one of them wrote a really good essay and just interviewed okay. The other one's essay was just okay, but interviewed exceptionally well. So they decided they were going to send them both. And so that's when they started coming up with more money, because they sent both that year. The next year they sent 2 again. Then we had like 8 that went, and so several of them donated frequent flyer miles, because I think it was in Houston that year. Donated frequent flyer miles and this kind of stuff in order for us to be able to send more. And so then we went from 8 to 12, and from 12 to 16, and from 16 to 20. And so the last time it was in person, which was in Orlando in 2019, we sent 20 girls, which, based on the number of majors who are female that we have, from a percentage standpoint, I would bet our percentage is higher than any other university. You've got a couple of big universities who may take 50 students, but they've got 900 majors.
Right.
And so they've got, from a percentage standpoint, it's not nearly as many. And so when we sent the 20 to Orlando, there were 26,000 people there, and probably all but 1,500 were female. And so imposter syndrome is common among, just in general, most students don't realize how common it actually is, but it's even more common for females in the field, because they're often, especially in computer science, the only girl in the class. And so they really feel like they shouldn't be there. And so Grace Hopper is a really good way to affirm how many female technologists are, how you belong. And the atmosphere there is just so wonderful because it's so much of you belong, you need to do this, you can do this. It's encouragement and this kind of thing. The last 2 years have been virtual. Not the same whatsoever. I mean, there's still a lot of good information because basically at the conference there's like 16 tracks, everything from AI to professional development and everything in between. Then there's student posters for students who have entered the poster contest. From their research. There's also the latest gizmos and gadgets that you can go try out from a technology standpoint. There's the Career Expo, where last time over 420 companies were there in person at the Career Expo, and many of them, I mean, Microsoft, Facebook, everybody you can possibly think of. And they have these booths that are like 60 by 60 in size. I mean, Capital One was making lattes with the foam on the top with the picture of the person in the foam. Or somebody else was doing nitrogen ice cream, or, you know, all kinds of stuff going on. And I remember one of the first years I went to a panel of CIOs. It was Target and Walmart and Best Buy. And one of it was the Target CIO, I believe, who looked out in the audience and he said, "Remember, you are not here competing with each other to get a job. We are here competing with each other to hire you."
To wrap this up, we've enjoyed our conversation with you, Dr. Getty. This has been so insightful. What advice would you give them as they go through school?
Well, I've had the opportunity to speak at orientation sometimes to new students and stuff, and what I'll usually like to tell them is what you do is what you make of it. And so you have to take the opportunity to get involved. And I would usually say that the first summer you're here, take a couple of extra classes and get ahead, because you will appreciate it later if you only have to take 12 hours a semester versus 15 hours a semester, because it actually makes a big difference. And so if you can get a little ahead, that counts. Another is to do a study abroad. It's so much fun, and don't think you can't afford it, because there are various scholarships out there. And so find what you want and do it first. And then, I mean, you can send a letter to all your friends asking for the GoFundMe or whatever, you know, and you'd be surprised where you might wind up getting help from. And so try to do a study abroad. The other thing is, granted, there's not many electives out there for a lot of majors, so you have to kind of plan in advance, but save your electives to the end, because not only you can take something easier and get a little bit of a break, but even more importantly, you're going to find out that there's other things that you're interested in that's related to your major that you want to take that class in. And so if you've saved your electives, then you can do that. So you want to be sure and do that. Most important thing is to start networking so you can find that internship. Because having something real on your resume makes all the difference. And some students say, well, how do I get the internship if I haven't gotten any experience? Go volunteer. Go to a senior center and offer to help them with computer setup problems. Go to the Gibbs Center here and see what kind of, you'd be surprised what kind of computer volunteering that there is that you can, you know, sometimes they want a little bit of an Access database setup or something like that. So whatever it is, if you can volunteer and get a little bit of that on your resume, and you can put your projects from class on your resume, then you can have a better chance to get your foot in the door at the internship. So those of you who get them through your sophomore year, you're ahead of the game. But especially get one between your junior and senior year, because it makes all the difference in the world in terms of finding the job at the end and knowing what you're worth. And it's very important to find out what you don't like. I remember a student one time after his internship, I said, well, you know, how'd you like your internship? He said, well, I know what I don't want to do. I said, well, that's good. That's just as important as knowing what you do want to do.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know, so I think that makes a big difference. So that's what I would advise. The other thing would be get involved in at least 2 clubs. One that's related to your major, and by involved I mean don't just go to meetings, be an officer. And the other one is something that you enjoy, whether it's club tennis, whether it's photography, whatever it is. do something that you like because you like it, because then you're going to find another group of friends because they're there for the same reason, and you've got something in common. And so be willing to step out there and just get involved.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Getty. We enjoyed
Thank
our
you.
conversation.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate you taking your time for us.